What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. As I find things to basically just keep me busy until 9.2 ends up on the PTR server, I decided to try my luck at running some old raids. One in particular that has gotten a lot of attention and supposed changes to make it easier to solo is Mythic Difficulty Antorus, the Burning Throne. The fact that an almost 5-ish year old raid is still needing things changed about it to make it doable by people way above the character level requirement for the content is frankly pretty crazy and honestly confusing to me, but I figured I'd take a stab at it to see exactly how easy or hard it was to get all the way through Mythic Antorus solo. This in theory should be superbly easy, as I'm doing this on a very well geared character that I play like 5 or 6 hours a day on, doing like plus 22 keys, so naturally I should be able to just walk in this whole raid with my eyes closed and just slap everything around and have no problems or wipes or anything bad should happen. Or not. Jokes aside, I'm gonna start this video by saying, honestly, this shouldn't even be remotely a challenge, and yet, in some cases, this is still not very easy to solo, considering I doubt I could get some of my ults through this raid unless I put them into tank specs and took 2 hours to do it. Also, if you try to do most of these fights with more than one person, all of the supposed changes and quality improvements to make it easier, yeah, they don't work. Which is something I find extremely frustrating when I want to run some old content with just one or two of my friends instead of being forced to do it solo. It honestly reminds me loosely of Spine of Deathwing, where it's actually kind of harder to do it with more than one person. Even to this day, I haven't done Spine of Deathwing in a few years, but last time I did it, it was literally easier to do it solo. I'm sure classes with better self-healing won't have that many issues, and I can imagine if someone is farming this with a bunch of lesser geared alts that this is just not going to be doable, which genuinely is kind of ridiculous at this point with how old this content is. I ended up doing all of this as a Venthyr Subtlety Rogue, mainly for the burst damage, and because Soothing Darkness heals you enough that most of the bosses were limited threat in terms of the damage output, except for a couple that I'll mention. I also highly recommend, if you are playing Subtlety for this, or really any class that benefits from extra targets to improve your single target damage via funneling, that you should try to pull any trash you can onto any bosses. This does virtually nothing if you're level 60 because the trash is pretty much level 45 or whatever, so it can't really hurt you, and for Subtlety Rogues at least, it'll allow you to basically just spam Shuriken Storms and funnel Eviscerates into the bosses to help speed up your kills. Anyways, on to the bosses. I'll segment this video out to each one, but I'll let you know that some are definitely way easier than others, so they're gonna get a little 10-second blurb. For example, Garothi Worldbreaker is honestly pretty laughable, so you shouldn't have too many issues other than maybe getting stunned once or twice. And again, you can just pull the trash from in front of Garothi Worldbreaker up into him if you want, that way you can get more funnel damage. The Felhounds of Sargeras, or puppies as I just call them, were also really easy. I just swapped between them until I got almost one of them dead since they don't share a health pool, that way I could finish them off at the same time so they wouldn't heal a bunch and make the fight take longer for no reason. The Antoran High Command was exceptionally easy too, since you don't need to jump into the command pods or anything, and you can just whack away at the bosses. This is another really good fight for any funnel classes due to all the adds that spawn, so you can easily just funnel your priority damage into a boss, since they share a health pool. You will get stunned every now and then, but otherwise you shouldn't have much trouble, just don't step on any of the bombs if you can avoid it. Portal Keeper Hasabel is only slightly dangerous if you don't avoid the big green beams or the big purple puddles that spawn, as you can still be knocked off the platform if you're not careful, which would be a pretty lame way to die. This boss spawns a lot of adds, and you can pull in trash from the main hallway, allowing you to funnel even more damage into the boss if you're Subtlety or again any classes with priority damage that works like that. You don't need to go up into any of the extra platforms either, just tunnel the boss and avoid getting blown off the platform. Oh, and I always find it amusing that Hasabel actually has a bell as one of the items in her loot table. I don't know, kinda random, but it always gave me a chuckle, even back then and even now when I still get a bell off of Hasabel. I don't know. Okay, so now on to Eonar. This fight sucks solo, honestly, and if you're a slow class or just didn't do this in the right order, you'll basically be instantly one-shot over and over. Even being pretty fast like a rogue, you need to get all of the timings of this right, which is honestly really frickin' lame, and this fight needs to be nerfed further. Okay, so the idea behind Eonar is you have to keep these enemies from attacking her, as she's this big fancy tree, constellation looking thing in the corner of the map. Enemies spawn on multiple pathways and will either run or fly towards her, and if she reaches 0 HP, you instantly die and lose the fight. The more enemies you kill, the more this green bar will fill up, and when it reaches full, Eonar will zap all the enemies on the map and wipe the field clean for you. For the mythic mechanic on this fight, you have to take a special teleporter into the Paraxis, which is that floating Legion spaceship right above the battlefield. These special teleporters will be spawned in every now and then, and Eonar will make a noise and blab about it, and they're these little green-looking flower things that spawn next to her. Inside of the Paraxis is 1 enemy and 4 crystals. You need to kill this enemy, and then click on all 4 of the crystals before this impending doom ability is cast, or you instantly lose the fight and die. Once you click on all 4 of the crystals, you have to escape the spaceship before it explodes, or you instantly die. So yeah, lots of ways to stupidly instantly die, which is just really great in a fight. You'll also be given a special action button which shoots you up into the air, and if you press the action button again, you can choose where you want to land because you'll kind of glide down back towards the earth. You'll be using this ability a lot, so get used to how it works. There are also these little jump pad things which look like little bits of wind coming off the edges of some of the platforms, and those will kind of move you between some platforms very quickly, but you'll really want to get used to that flying ability. Any movement speed buffs that you have will be massively helpful in this fight, even if that means swapping covenants or running a talent you don't normally use. So enemies will spawn in 3 locations: the middle platform, which is where you entered the room from, an upper platform, which you should see above Eonar, and a lower platform, way out on the other side of the room away from Eonar. To start the encounter, talk to Eonar on her stupid little tree platform thing, and immediately enemies will start spawning, so you'll use your flying action button to head back towards the middle platform, which is the entrance of the room. Kill all of the enemies here until a giant fel-infused destructor robot thing shows up. Destroy this guy and immediately head to the upper platform spawn by using your extra action button. There are also some jump pads on the very central platform and a couple other spots if your button's on cooldown, but the timing is very tight even with the flying ability, so these might not help you all that much. You should see a single Fel Lord and another giant robot up here, so kill them and then jump down to land right next to Eonar. You should see all these Fel puppies coming from the middle platform ramp, so you'll kill those and then jump down to the lower platform ramp, and you should only need to kill 1 Felhound if you've done this right. At this point, the bar should be full, and Eonar will zap everything and babble about how the Legion is charging their Doom Laser, so use your flying ability or a movement speed to get back to Eonar. Behind her are those green, glowy, flowery portal things, so run into one of those and you'll be transported onto the Legion ship. Kill the guy in the center of the ship, and on both sides you should see these crystals with beams coming out of them. Click on all 4 of these, but start with the side of the room to the southern half of the map. If you look up on my minimap in the corner of the screen, you can see what I mean because the exit is always to the northern side of the ship. Once you escape, you'll use your flying button to shoot off towards the lower platform, where another giant robot should just be spawning or maybe just starting to attack Eonar. You'll want to kill the Felhounds and the Fel Lords on this lower pathway as they get closer to Eonar, since you'll be getting another round of the Doom Laser thing like right about then. Jump back over to Eonar if she used her special Zappy power, and that'll clear the map, or make sure you kill enough things to clear the map. And be sure to use that green flower portal thing to get back onto the Legion ship, so you can stop the guy and click on the crystals to stop the Doom Laser. Remember, you can use your flying button inside of the ship too, as it's really handy for crossing the room quickly. Once you escape the second time, you can basically just kill anything that gets close to Eonar and the fight should be over. Honestly, this is way too complicated for such an old bit of content, but oh well, I guess at least it's able to be soloed, ? If you're a really slow class, it might be worth going Night Fae just for Soul Shape, honestly, because even if Night Fae's a crappy covenant for your class, if you can't get to these things fast enough, you'll die immediately, so it doesn't matter how good your covenant ability is. Venthyr isn't too bad either with Door of Shadows, especially if you run Theotar with his double charges of Door of Shadows, but those are really the only things I can think of that would help any class in the game move a little quicker. Now back onto some easy bosses, finally. Imonar the Soulhunter is pretty much a no-brainer and does limited damage, but the bridge thing is still really annoying because you're gonna have to cross over it like 3 times to fight him on each side because he keeps running away like a jerk. Avoid the green mines and traps because they'll either stun you or potentially knock you off the platform, but if you do have immunities you can stop that, which is kinda nice. The red beams and traps just hurt, so feel free to sprint through those instead. Other than that, yeah, it's a pretty nice tank and spank easy fight compared to the mess that was Eonar. Kingaroth is another pretty chill fight. Just avoid the Ruiner Beam and the balls if you want and you're squishy, and kill the ads that show up, but honestly, you might be able to even leave the ads up and use them for funneling into boss damage. I honestly forgot because I'm so used to doing the fight back then and just killed the ads, so you might actually be able to leave them up and get even more priority damage on the boss that way. Varimathras is also very easy if you're solo, but if you're clearing the raid with even one extra person, then you better have some decent defensives or a lot of burst damage, because this fight is a mess with multiple people. Absorption style healing and magic immunities make this fight easy if you're in a group, but yeah, I really don't think they tested this with multiple people in mind, so it really is better to just do it solo if you're able. Coven of the Shivarra also has some issues if you're in a group, but solo you can just stack them and basically cleave away until the fight's over. If you're solo, they just don't get their massive damage reduction effect when they're too close to each other, but if you bring any friends, then you will need to tank them separately because yeah, they'll get like a 90-something% damage mitigation aura. Unsurprisingly, Aggramar is also a nuisance if you're in a group, as one of his moves does a massive knockback that will look like something out of Skyrim with its insane ragdoll effects when you get hit by a giant. If you're still solo though, this knockback becomes a small tickle and just bumps you back like 10 or 15 yards, which is great. So just don't stand on the edge of the platform and you should be perfectly fine. Aggramar does have some pretty hard-hitting moves though, so self-healing and defensives are a good idea to keep active even if you're a relatively geared character. And lastly, Argus, the whole point most people are coming here for their cool scythes and their mount. This is the only fight I couldn't test in a group because we literally couldn't kill Aggramar with more than one person in the group since we were messing around on alts, so I can't say how bad any of these mechanics are if you decide to do this in a party. Solo though, he does hit pretty hard and is the only boss I was actually kinda worried could actually kill me just in raw damage dealt. Still manageable, but the last phase does become a bit chaotic with all the whirling scythes and the puddles and the orbs and junk. I'd recommend if you have them, blow things like pre-pots and less, just in case, as I can't say how easy or hard he would be for some classes if you're not a tank or have good immunities or self-healing. So the conclusion, is Mythic Antorus able to be soloed? Well, technically, yes. Is it something you could do AFK like most old raids? Unfortunately not quite, despite being almost exactly 5 years ago from when this video was made was when the raid was released, which is just honestly unreasonable to me. I play my rogue quite a lot and have pretty darn good gear, and that last phase of Argus had me actually pretty annoyed with how much damage it puts out, and it doesn't make me very optimistic of farming this raid on any of my undergeared characters. Unless like I just make them all go tank spec and want this thing to take like 3 times longer than it did on my rogue. I'm also pretty disappointed at how poorly implemented some of these changes are, and the fact that most of these quote-unquote improvements made to Antorus have literally zero effect if you have more than one person in the group. That is like some rudimentary basic programming required to just make abilities not as punishing, but it feels like someone just went in and slapped in "if only one person in group" conditional statement in front of some of the boss mechanics and not actually tuning the raid like at all. I'm hoping this helps shine some more attention on this issue because frankly it's pretty silly that content this old is probably still not doable for all people that are at max level unless you're relatively tanky or pretty well geared. Anyways folks, I hope this insight on the status of Mythic Antorus proves helpful to you, and at the very least gives you an idea of what to expect if you plan on farming it for any transmog or the mount. If the video does help, please consider leaving a like or a comment as they're greatly appreciated and help improve the channel's growth. As always, my appreciation and gratitude to all of my viewers and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.